Available for the Cowboys to draft last week, but the front office wasn't caught off guard at all. Stephen Jones says the team was prepared for the top cornerbacks to be off the board by the time they chose, and that most of the conversations around the scenario involved them taking Micah Parsons as a backup plan. So, Shannon, are you surprised the Cowboys admitted they wanted one of the two corners here?
No, Skip, the three highest rated defensive players in no particular order: Patrick Surtain II, J.C. Horn, and Micah Parsons. Now, some people might have had Parsons number one on their board. Some people might have had Surtain. Some people might have had J.C. Horn. But I think universally regarded, those were the three top defensive players. Okay, now, top three defensive players. We need a defensive player. We would like to get our hands on one of the cornerbacks. Now, we're looking like maybe Carolina might take a quarterback. That means, hey, we got a chance. We're picking 10, Skip. So if Carolina takes a quarterback, we're gonna have our choice. Either we're gonna get J.C. Horn or we get Pat Surtain. Now the Broncos, they might take a quarterback too, because I know they got Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock, but come on, guys, y'all can use a quarterback. So that way, if Carolina and Denver, we got our choice. We get J.C. Horn, we get Pat Surtain.
And your point is?
My point is, they took both of those guys. Now the number one defensive player on the board. That's what they said the other day. Michael Parsons was the number one defensive player on their board.
That's what they said.
Either they lying
said that Thursday night.
Right, either they're lying then or they're lying now.
Thank you.
So B-Skip, if you, the top three defensive players, two are off the board, you need a defensive player, and the one falls in your lap, even if you got J.C. Horn rated ahead of Pat Surtain. If somebody takes J.C. Horn, who you taking, Skip? Patrick Surtain, right? So if the other two guys are gone, guess who you taking, Skip? Ta-da! It's not that complicated, Steven. I mean, it's simple math. The three top-rated defensive guys, two are gone. You need a defensive guy. Yep. You took the third one. Now, I don't know how Michael Parsons gonna feel about that, being, the second, not the first, not the second, but the third option.
Thank you.
How he feels about that, Skip.
Now you're hot. Now you got it.
That's something y'all gonna have to deal with later in time.
That is correct.
But I think, Skip, if he goes in there and plays like I believe he can play, they'll be glad they made this selection, because I think this guy has all-pro. He has Pro Bowl potential. Not to say these other guys can't, but this guy, I believe he'll be a difference maker that the other two guys can't be that currently occupy that position.
Okay, I got all that. Here's my biggest takeaway from this story that I read about Stephen Jones' quotes on his radio show in Dallas, Texas.
He got a radio show now?
He's got a radio show. Oh. It pains me greatly to admit that Stephen Jones is turning into Jerry Jones. Like father, like son. I never saw this coming in a million years, because I knew Stephen Jones way back when he was just the son, when he had just finished playing football at Arkansas as a backup safety. I'm pretty sure he got the scholarship. I don't even know if he had a scholarship because of his father's influence at Arkansas.
All that money, he don't put it in this shit.
That is correct. That is correct. But he was a backup safety. I think he got to play a little bit. The Stephen Jones I got to know in 1989, the first year that Jerry owned the team, was a young man who had his father's smarts, because Jerry is a shrewd operator. Stephen had his smarts, but Stephen was look before you leap.
Right.
Stephen was measured. He was stable. He would ponder. He would gather information. Then he would go.
Right.
And Jerry is quite...
Jerry going, he'll think about it later.
He's just going to go. So I always thought, hey, if it comes to pass that maybe he inherits the ownership and general managership of this team, he'd be pretty great at it.
You were thinking Stephen's going to be the voice of reason. He's going to be Jerry's conscience, the good little angel.
He always has been the voice of reason.
Yes.
And you know all the classic stories? The Deion Sanders story about they actually got in almost a fist fight where Stephen had to push Jerry up. He calls his dad Jerry.
He called him Jerry.
Push him up against the wall because he's going to overpay for Deion, and it finally worked out, and all they did was go win another Super Bowl.
Right.
That was the third and the final Super Bowl.
Right.
And you know the Johnny Manziel story that Stephen saved Jerry from himself and the franchise from not having a Zach Martin, who, as you say, perennial Pro Bowler and a probable Hall of Famer alongside you up in Canton, Ohio.
Yes.
Okay, so we get all that. I don't get any of this. because this is Stephen on his radio show. He has a radio show, and I think it's only a couple of years old, where Stephen always avoided the limelight in the first couple of years, and now he seems, to use your term of a couple of topics back, he is addicted to the limelight. And he is spilling his guts about their draft process for one reason and one reason only. He is pounding his own chest publicly about, I want everybody to know just how involved I was in these decisions as they were made on the fly. Because he is now the quasi-GM as his father fades closer and closer to retiring, to backing away, to fading into the sunset, or, God help him, I'm knocking on wood, leaving this earth at some point. And Jerry does talk often about his mortality.
He does.
Okay, so here we go with Stephen Jones just blurting, gushing to improve his stock in listeners' minds about just how much football he knows. And like his father, he has a compulsion to convince you he really knows football.
Right.
He played a little college football. Jerry played a whole lot of college football. He was a starter on a national championship team at offensive guard. You got to give him that.
Yeah.
And I've always thought Stephen knew football a little better than his father knows football, just in feel and in sort of insight, and to be able to see it before it happens. I would value Stephen's opinion that way. So why do you need to announce publicly, to admit and acknowledge publicly that we knew the scenario existed? We discussed it the last 2 days ahead of the draft, that both corners could be off the board by the time we picked.
Right.
And that matters what? Because you tried to sell us on Thursday night into Friday that Micah Parsons was #1 on defense on your board.
That's what
that he was the 4th-ranked defensive player. Well, I don't think that's possible. If that's you're admitting that you targeted one or the other corner, and I believe it was in that order. I think they wanted J.C. Horn in part because he was coached by Will Muschamp, who is the best friend or one of the best friends of the new DC, Dan Quinn. So it was probably J.C. Horn, who obviously went to Carolina, and then it was my guy, Patrick Surtain. I've been pounding this side of the table for Patrick Surtain, and he's off the board right ahead of you, and I tweeted something that you can go look up on my timeline, a bunch of symbols that equaled a word I can't say, because that just tore my guts out. And yet students said, we were prepared. Well, he says we were prepared because we had talked about Micah Parsons as well as a couple of other players. Remember, Mel Kiper was really high on Rashawn Slater, who went the next pick to the Chargers. Mel Kiper gave 2 A grades for the draft to 2 teams, Miami and the Chargers. Why? Because the Chargers took Rashawn Slater, who could be an instant Pro Bowl left tackle out of Northwestern. And what did they do in the 2nd round? They took Asante Samuel Jr. Okay, go look at my timeline. What did I say when the Cowboys took Kelvin Joseph? I'm like, what? In the 2nd round? You took Kelvin Joseph when Asante Samuel Jr. was just sitting there and he goes 3 picks later? It's like made to order, because what did I love the most about Patrick Surtain? Bloodlines, like father, like son, because his father was a Pro Bowl corner. Well, so was Asante's father. And I just love that. I love it that your big brother was Sterling. You know, I love it that you had that. You had that example set for you. You knew that your bloodline had gone to Green Bay and broken through and been a great player. It helps your mentality.
It does. I don't have to get a coach.
No.
I got a brother that played.
You got a brother.
They don't have to go get a coach. They had a dad that played in the NFL and played the exact same position, so he can teach you the techniques.
And it feels like it's your birthright, like you were born to play this position, because your father played it at the highest level. So I'm like, why wouldn't you take Asante Samuel? So then it slays me again yesterday. I see Pro Football Focus, your least favorite website, but they rank next year's candidates for Defensive Player of the Year. #1 on their list was Micah Parsons. That's your guy. And I'm like, good. Here we go. #2 on their list was Asante Samuel Jr. And I'm thinking, we could have had the top 2 candidates for Defensive Player of the Year. They could have vied for Defensive Player. They could have competed internally for Defensive Player of the Year all year. Maybe Asante picks off 7 passes next year, and Micah Parsons leads the team in tackles and makes the Pro Bowl, right? Well, okay, so, Stephen, why would you do this to Micah Parsons? You're saying we had 2 targets ahead of him that we wanted, and we lost both of those. And then we actually had a group of 3 players we were thinking about at #10,
and we settled on him.
And we settled on Micah. Okay, Well, I love Micah. I love him as much as you do. I would have taken the corner because it was a little more need-based,
Right.
and I'm just a big fan of Patrick Surtain because I like his football character. I think he's a cornerstone that you could plug in at one of the corners, and he's going to make 10 Pro Bowls, and you can trust him to become a leader of your defense. I don't know about Micah because he had an off-field issue, and he's got some big ego issues going on. That can all channel into